behind Aunt Nancy's purple Chevy truck and stared at the turquoise butterfly painted on the tailgate. An updated vintage flower child makeover for the 1967 truck. She didn't know what prompted the unannounced visit, but if it had to do with that jerk who'd stood her up not once, but twice, Mia didn't want to hear it. In fact, she hadn't wanted to hear it the first time her aunt conspired with Caden's Aunt Taffy to bring them together. They insisted Caden was nothing like the last 4 guys she dated, all of them handsome, eligible bachelors looking to get laid, with nothing much to say and nothing more important planned for their future than wasting away in an office job they hated and watching the next big game on TV. It's not like she was picky. Okay, maybe a little picky. She expected her dates to show up on time, dressed in clean clothes that fit well, and at the very least run a comb through their hair. She expected a guy to carry on a conversation with more than monosyllable answers. They needed to believe that chocolate anything was an acceptable meal at any time of the day. And manners. For God's sake, they should pay for dinner instead of sticking her with the tab. She dropped one loser boyfriend who made one excuse after the next for losing one job and then another, begging her to help a guy out. It would be nice if someone did something nice for her. She took care of herself, had since her mother ran off 6 days before her 16th birthday. It took Mia about 10 seconds to figure out her mother had stolen all the money Mia had stashed away, and this time she wasn't coming back. Too wild at heart. Too much of free spirit to care about consequences. Too self-centered to care what happened to her only child. Too caught up in the notion that there was always something better around the corner. Luckily for Mia, she had Aunt Nancy to fill the gaping hole in her heart. If God had his eye on the ball, he'd have put her soul in Aunt Nancy's hands in the first place. Then again, she'd ended up with Aunt Nancy as the mother of her heart anyway. So maybe he was watching out for her after all. The mail practically spilled out of her box at the end of the drive, thanks to the many gardening, decorating, and cooking magazines she subscribed to and pored over during the lonely hours she spent home alone. All she needed was a dozen cats to complete her old maid living in the garden cottage reality. She walked up the path. So many of the late summer blooms had faded. The colder temps would soon send her garden into another long winter's nap. She had her beloved greenhouse, but she really loved coming home to the flowers blooming in the garden, their sweet scent on the breeze. A couple more weeks and they'd be buried in snow. She walked in the door and caught Aunt Nancy kissing Aunt Taffy on the sofa in front of a fire. The 2 women pulled apart, their eyes wide. Both of them blushed and smiled at getting caught. Aunt Nancy ran her fingers through her wild mane of blonde waves. Aunt Taffy pressed her lips together and looked away. You know, I thought one day I might catch my teenage son making out with a girl on the couch. I never thought it would go down like this, she teased her 2 favorite people. At least they'd found that special someone to love and be loved by. Mia was beginning to think if everyone had someone, her Mr. Right was MIA and wanted to stay that way. You can't have a teenage son if you don't get yourself a man, her aunt scolded. Mia walked into the living room and fell into the chair next to the sofa, smiling at the way the 2 ladies held hands and smiled back at her. There are clinics for that now. There will be a man waiting for you tonight at the Blue Pearl restaurant, Aunt Taffy said. Not fair. She loved that place. As a chef, she appreciated a great meal by her fellow chefs, even if they were competition to her restaurant. Mia held up a hand. Oh no, not again. Being stood up twice is humiliating enough. I don't intend to let him do that to me again, especially at a place where I'm known. Aunt Taffy tilted her head, her eyes filled with sympathy. Caden is really sorry. His work, it makes it hard for him to have a personal life. Exactly. He doesn't want a personal life, which is why he'd made his aunt apologize for him. Again. Yes, he does, Aunt Taffy defended. If he did, the least he could do is call, a text even, to let me know he couldn't make it. Instead, he completely forgot he was even supposed to meet me. Aunt Nancy leaned forward, her long, more white than blonde hair falling over her shoulders and framing her face. Mia, dear, give the man a break. His brother was shot and almost died. As excuses went, completely forgivable. But if Caden truly wanted to meet her, he'd have made an effort in some way, shape, or form instead of this silence and absence he gave her.